Man, they really don't make movies like this often enough, man. I love this. Welcome again, everyone. My name is Chet. This here is ChetChat, and we saw another movie, probably my favorite movie in the last few movies I've seen, It. So the main reason I love this movie is because it's part of this weird genre of films that involve just a bunch of kids who have to deal with a legitimate problem. Something like Super 8 or The Lost Boys. And I'm sure there's a few other movies that I'm forgetting, but I really actually like those movies because of that type of fun genre where it's just kids just dealing with a problem. More recently, there was a TV series called Stranger Things on Netflix that carried that same nostalgic feeling. And that's the main reason why I love that series as well. Just because of that factor, It has a step up above other movies because it has the kids dealing with a problem. So It 2017 is actually a reboot or remake of the classic It miniseries, which was 2 episodes, which is also based off of a Stephen King novel. I don't really remember much from the miniseries, honestly. I only saw it once, and I didn't even see it in one sitting. But I do remember certain things about it, and I do remember, it was actually not too bad. I remember there was one funny part that I was hoping that they did in the movie, but I guess it's out of place. There's a scene where this guy is pumping gas and a clown comes up to him and he's like, "Hey, I got a balloon. Don't you want it?" And he just keeps zooming in on him and the balloon, I think. He just keeps going, "Don't you want it? Don't you want it? Don't you want it?" But I was a wee young lad when I watched it, so I don't really remember much about it. So I'm not going to act like I know all the Easter eggs that are shown in this movie or all the references to the last movie or whatever. I'm sure they were there, but I don't know. So this story takes place in a town called Derry. It's a fictional town where people disappear and go missing above the national average. 6 times above the national average. And these kids actually come to find out that there's this clown who actually is the main culprit of this problem. But they also find out that this clown does this every 27 years. So he is come back and he is recently starting to feed again in his town. And the main character named Bill, his brother Georgie, actually gets kidnapped and goes missing. That's the main driving force of this story, where Bill finds out about this clown and he actually involves his friends in it because he's worried for his friends because they might disappear as well. And nobody's really doing anything about it. It's like normal for kids to disappear in this town, so people aren't that worried. There's even a part in the movie where one person was missing and then another person went missing, and there's a sign that it's a missing persons report. It actually ends up getting covered by another missing person report. The main character, he's really adamant about trying to solve this issue with this clown because he doesn't want people to just get forgotten, and more people are just going to get forgotten if they just let this clown run rampant. But the interesting thing about this clown is that he's a weird creature. He's not a person. It's just this weird being that could do things. The main thing that it does is that it can turn itself into something that you fear, and it feeds off of your fear. So the main character, Bill, his main fear is that he can't find his brother. So he always parades Georgie around in front of him to try and lure him in. And then everybody else, all the kids have a fear that he tries to exploit. And it's interesting to see what these kids are afraid of. It's like irrational fears. Even me as a kid, I had an irrational fear. I don't think I ever told anybody this story, but let's talk about the story right quick. So, bless my mom, she actually bought my brother and I the VHS for Aliens, which ended up being my favorite movie of all time. But the problem is that I'm pretty sure I was in elementary school when I watched it. So I watched Aliens and Alien 3 before I even got to junior high school. So because of the way how Alien 3 looked, it almost looked like a weird bathroom in a sense. There was like a lot of scenes that took place in like areas that looked like bathrooms. So I grew a irrational fear of bathroom, especially my bathroom, my house. It had like a greenish tint to the light bulbs. I was deathly afraid of using the bathroom in my house. And then that fear ended up transferring over to my school, where I almost crapped myself because I was afraid to use the bathroom. So yeah, when you're a kid, you have irrational fears of things. And I don't know how it would have scared me with bathroom stuff. Maybe it would just teleport me into a bathroom because it could do things like that. So it was really interesting to see how afraid the kids were and the way how he exploited that fear. The other cool thing is that with this type of movie where it's just about the kids, there's very little adult influence in this movie because the adults won't understand the problem. And especially when you learn about how it feeds, it wouldn't really be able to get the attention of an adult because an adult won't really have that irrational fear. So other than that, let's get into the acting, and I think the acting is phenomenal. They even have a kid, Finn Wolfhard, I think his name is. He's from Stranger Things. So it's interesting that they take a kid from that TV series, which is pretty much the same thing as this movie, but his character is completely different. In Stranger Things, he was the main character who had to deal with issues, whereas this kid in this movie, he's almost like the comic relief. And it's very interesting because his fear is straight up a fair of clowns. So his should be like the greatest fair of all for the movie because the main villain is a clown. And let's get into the clown right quick. I forget who is the actor for the clown. I'll put it up here. But he was amazing. Like they don't, like, you know, in these movies, in these horror movies, they don't show you what is scaring you until all the end of the movie. So many horror movies do that. That's like the trope. Like you never get to see what is scaring you until it's too late or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this movie, I think like 10 minutes in, you see the clown and he is just disturbing as hell. It is just amazing. I love the first scene with him and Georgie. The dialogue is so good. He puts the kid in a false sense of security and just lures him in and ultimately attacks the kid. But it's not really a scary thing. Like there's no jump scares. It's just really, really disturbing. And I feel like if you're gonna scare me with something disturbing. You could easily scare somebody with like a jump scare with rising music and loud noise, whatever. But if you could disturb someone, you will mess them up for a while. That's the thing I love about disturbing movies. It hits deeper. It affects your soul, man. Like you could just go blah and then that's the end of the fair. But if you could disturb someone, that just will linger. And this clown, I'm still seeing him in my head, and there's so many slight disturbing things about him. It's just, his proportions are all weird. He's got really broad shoulders, really long arms. His forehead is huge, but from afar, he looks normal. But when you get into the intricacies of his being, it's disturbing nonetheless. Like just when you see him talking to Georgie from the store, his eyes just kind of wander independently. They're not focused. They're just around. It's just so creepy and so well done. I love it so much. But other than the acting and the fair, the musical score works with it. The setting is perfect. 1988 and 1989. I feel like you can't make this movie in a contemporary setting because there's so many things that you have to deal with kids now, and the technology aspect of it. Lack of technology makes for a better horror movie in a sense because you can't do research properly, because there's always that scene in these newer horror movies where they go online, Bagul, the Babadook, whatever. I don't want to talk bad about the Babadook. I actually like the Babadook. 1989 was a perfect time to make this movie. And I believe it's the original time anyway. You shouldn't go far from the source material, I think. So yeah, I definitely recommend this movie. I loved it to death. I just love these types of movies where it's just, you know, kids, they're having fun, they're trying to have fun, and then they have to deal with a real issue. I love the fact that also in the movie, there's like a running joke where they're just telling kids that it's summertime, kids should be outside having fun with their friends. And I don't think, you know, kids do that now in our contemporary time. They're busy, you know, going to day camp or whatever, or staying at home, playing video games, poning noobs. So this movie, it brings back that nostalgic feeling of having fun in the summer, and those old school movies where it's just kids having fun, dealing with real issues, something like The Goonies, and ultimately it works for me. So I'm just going to get into a really, really quick spoiler warning right now, because I just wanted to give a little light on my opinion on a certain aspect of this film and the original. So yeah, spoiler warning. So if you want to leave now, I definitely recommend it. Go ahead and give me a like if you liked the video, thumbs down if you didn't like it, go ahead and subscribe if you really liked it. You could go ahead and leave now. Spoiler time. So in the original, I remember in the miniseries, barely remember that there's two parts to this. The kids part, and the kids actually grow up because of that 27-year thing. The way how the movie ends, you don't really know if they kill it, but he disappears and certain things change about the town. I was actually worried that this movie would cover both arcs. It only covers the child arc. And when you see the clown die and all that, they show you the ending and they finish the movie, and then the title screen comes up, it says it, and at the bottom it says chapter 1. And I was like, yes, we're going to get the adult movie. And I was so happy to see that they didn't even hint to it throughout the whole movie. If they just ended the movie, we wouldn't even know that we're going to get the adult movie. But they show you in the end, it says chapter 1. It tells you that chapter 2 is coming out, and I'm sure it's definitely going to come out because this movie is so good, and I'm hoping that the word got out that this movie's great and it does well in the box office and we can get that movie. So I'm actually wondering how we can make this movie just as good with adults in it now. And that's a weirder dynamic because now it's just adults coming together and dealing with an issue that is more difficult for children to deal with, but now as adults they can deal with it. But if I remember correctly, in the original, they have a hard time dealing with it as adults. I think a certain few deaths are involved. Nobody dies in the kid movie. They get close to dying, but when they're adults, people start dying off. So I was wondering, like, what is a movie that is similar to this issue where adults have to deal with it? And the only movie I could think of right now, I'm sure there's other movies like it, but The Dreamcatcher is very similar to that, where it's a ragtag group of friends who meet up in this cabin to talk about their friend Duddits, who was weird and mystical in a sense, and he brought this group of friends together, and they're really weird kids. Like, they were weird kids when they were young, and they grow up to be weird adults in a sense. And they have the same kind of attributes as kids. Like, one of them, he has like, you know, an oral fixation where he needs something in his mouth, and that ultimately is his demise. But I feel like Dreamcatcher is a good scope to see how the second It movie would play. Dreamcatcher is not an amazing movie because of the weird alien effect that it has in it, and it has a weird dynamic, and it's kind of gross at sometimes, but I feel like that's a good scope to gauge and see where this movie could head. And I'm hoping that it'll be better, because I hope that they get the first director for this movie, It, to direct the second one. It's not usually a good idea to switch directors. That's how I think it's going to be. So that's it for this one. My name is Chet. This here is ChetChat. Go ahead and like the video if you liked it. Go ahead and dislike if you didn't, and go ahead and subscribe if you really like this video, and we can get some more reviews out to you there and see some more stuff hopefully down the line, you know what I'm saying? And go ahead and comment below if you actually agree with me on where this movie can head in chapter 2, or if you actually freshly remember the original movie, and do you recognize all of the little Easter eggs and stuff? I'd like to hear about them if you actually remember them. Alright, so that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching them movies, and don't go to bed at night.